Now there is a bold statement. If you saw the title and came here just to tell me that a $500 digital multi-effects can never replace your farm-raised boutique pedals that cost you an arm and a leg, then please make your way to the comments section with some hopefully inventive and refreshing insults. Are they gone? Good. Now it's just you and me. The Pod Go is a multi-effects floor processor from Line6, and it's sometimes mistakenly referred to as the poor man's Helix. It's not really fair, because while the Pod Go is less than a third the price of a full-fat Helix, both units share a surprising amount of features. And here's a little secret: they sound the same. Everything I cover here is relevant for the Pod Go and the Pod Go Wireless, as the only difference between the two units is that the wireless Pod Go has wireless. Also, Line6 have sponsored this video, but all thoughts, opinions, and bum notes belong to me. So here are the 5 ways the Pod Go can replace your guitar rig, giving you more time to make music. Firstly, you can use it as a standalone, do everything, you just plug your guitar in and off you go solution. This means that you can set up your patches, and we'll start with, say, like a Hendrix style sound with a wah, an overdrive, a Univibe style pedal, a Fender amp, and some greenbacks, and then you come out of the line outs of the Pod Go into the mixer of your PA system and then push that volume as loud as you can get away with. Now, I played a rig like this with the Pod XT live in a covers band for a few years, and the Pod Go is far easier to use and it sounds far better than I did back in those days, and that was my main job. So yes, the sounds in this are good enough to gig, record, and do all kinds of things with. For most players, the Pod Go has all the sounds you need, and even if you need some ambient, spacey, spaced out tones, the Pod Go can do that as well. Also, if you have your own impulse responses, you can load those into the Pod Go using the Mac or PC of your choice and the Pod Go edit software. If you're not quite ready to go all in one with the Pod Go and you have some pedals in your collection that you simply cannot part with, the Pod Go plays very nicely with external effects. Let's say I want to use one of my favorite fuzz pedals in a song. I just put that in between the guitar and the pod, and off I go, treating the Pod Go as the rest of my pedal board and my amplifier. Or if you have a specific modulation or time-based pedal that you want to use, you can plug that into the effects loop of the Pod Go and then tell the Pod Go where in your signal chain you want that effects loop to be. For example, you can have it before your drives, or after your drives. As well as having the main left and right outs to go to the PA system, the Pod Go has a dedicated amp out socket, which you can connect to the return of the effects loop of your guitar amp or the input of a very clean amp or FR powered cab. Why would you want to do this? Well, let's say that you turn up to a gig and it has the backline provided and you absolutely have to use the amps. Sometimes those amps are not that desirable, so you can send the main outs from your Pod Go into the PA mixer, and then by using the amp out, you can use the on-stage amp as your monitor. So now you can hear your guitar. Now, of course, you could go from the main output of the pod into the amp, but if you do it that way, you need to turn off the cab in all the patches on the Pod Go so that you're not sending an already mic'd up cab sound into your amp, which you then mic up. That just doesn't sound nice. By using the amp out, you can give the sound engineer what they want from the main outs, which is the mic'd up cab sound from the Pod Go, and then you get to use the power amp and cab of the onstage backline. Now, the amp out socket setup is not perfect. It takes the signal from the Pod Go after the amp simulation block. So if you have an amp on stage that doesn't have an effects loop, you'll need to plug into the amp's main input. And if that amp doesn't have a good clean sound, then your on-stage sound is not going to sound good. Ideally, Line 6 would enable you to put the amp out before the amp simulation, and maybe that'll come in a future update, which thankfully Line 6 offer pretty regularly, and they do usually include some more pedals and amps. Yay! Free stuff. Here are some things that I found on the internet that weigh around the same as a Pod Go. 1 pack of A4 printer paper, a 2-slice toaster, a bag of carrots, an electric kettle, 5 footballs, and a small cat. Look, it fits in the front pocket of my gig bag. So I've got my entire guitar rig all in one backpack. I've got the guitar, the cables, and the Pod Go. I guess I should say at this point that the Pod Go is partially made out of plastic, unlike the big brother Helix. But don't understand that as this means cheap and breakable. This thing is rock solid, and the sheer portability makes it absolutely worth it. Now, regardless of whether you're a newcomer to recording guitar or if you're a hardened producer, the Pod Go can probably offer you something. By using the Pod Go as an audio interface, you can record a stereo wet signal that has all your amps and effects on it, but you can also simultaneously set up a second stereo channel that will record all your dry guitar parts without any effects, so that you can reamp and manipulate that clean DI signal later on. Now, if all that meant nothing to you, don't worry, because you can of course record from the main outs into your audio interface via jack cables, so that what you play is what's recorded. But by using the Pod Go as your audio interface and recording those 2 stereo channels, the wet and the dry, you could set up a patch that somewhat gets into the ballpark of the tone that you want, and simultaneously record those 2 signals, wet and dry, and then later play that clean DI signal back through the Pod Go and tweak the patch to your heart's content. To put it simply, let's say that you record the best take of a solo part you've ever played, but later on you find out that there's too much reverb on it, or you've missed the delay part or something. By recording that clean DI by using the Pod Go as your audio interface, you can go back and tweak that reverb or delay or any setting you want, reamp the recording without needing to replay that part. And you can also use that dry DI signal with any plugins that you may have, or by using a reamping box, you could send that clean DI signal through a real amp and real pedals. But that's the subject for another video. Although this video is not a review, because I've reviewed the Pod Go many times before in many videos, I have nothing negative to say about the Pod Go. It's all good stuff. Line 6 have put the main highlights of the Helix into a more affordable and more portable box that still very much rocks. Frankly, there are more effects and amps and all kinds of doodly things in here that most of us need. And unless you have a pedal board or sound that specifically requires some wacky pedals, I think the Pod Go can cover most situations. So that's it from me and the Pod Go. Oh, let's use the carry handle. There we go. The Pod Go. This is the end of the video, and that means you've made it to the end of the video club to prove that you are a member of this prestigious elite. When you leave your comment down below telling me what you think of the Pod Go and if it can replace your rig, please also include the phrase, "but it's not red." And that'll let me know that you watched this part of the video. Thank you for doing that. The YouTube gods will shine down merrily upon me. Don't go anywhere. There's some more videos over there you can check out to continue your YouTube guitar experience, unless you're rushing off to go and buy yourself a Pod Go, where in that case, there are links in the video description. And while you're down there, drop a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Either way. I will see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.